everyone. Want to start right on time. I'm Joni Faxon from Employee Engagement. I want to welcome you all here today, and I'd like to turn it over to Judy. Kenny. Hello. Day one, back from vacation. So exciting. I'm thrilled to be here. Not really. No. So the second of the admin group, fiscal was, I don't even remember how long ago now, a month or something. Today, human resources. So I'm the director of administration, so I'm over most of the administrative stored stuff, which is fiscal and HR and BAS and administrative rules. And that's really it. So who am I turning it over to though? Chuck McElrath. Some of you might not recognize him. He arrived about 6 weeks ago.
Actually, more like 8 weeks ago.
8 weeks ago. Time flies. I didn't count my vacation away.
There you go.
Part of your time. So he's our new director of HR. So welcome to Chuck and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. And thank everybody for coming from me as well, and from the whole team. Just a quick bit of logistics on your chairs. Should be an agenda, the evaluation form that we'll ask you to please fill out at the end of the session. And Joan has provided the Do You Know application, or what would you call that? The submission form. So we would encourage people who would like to share information about themselves to participate in the Do You Know portion of employee engagement. We also have some informational packets up here that we'll put out at the table at the end of the session. You can feel free to pick one up on your way out. We'll briefly review what's in the packets at the end of the presentation, but it's just some informational materials for you. So, do I know what button I'm pushing? Any button? Okay. So the first thing we wanted to do is really talk about the mission of HR. We have a detailed HR mission statement framed on the wall in our office, and it was developed before my time, obviously, but it was actually one of the first things that I saw when I came in for the interview for the job, and I was quite impressed. And so I do want to give kudos and props to everyone who was involved in developing that mission statement. I would encourage all staff to take a look at that whenever they're up visiting our offices. It contains a lot of information about our mission, our staff, our values, and our goals. And some of the highlights are here on the slide, that we exist to provide confident, courteous, and professional assistance to all staff at the Department of State, that we're responsible for a comprehensive HR program. We're committed to providing high-quality service to all prospective, current, and past employees, and that we also strive to balance competence in the technical aspects of our work with the sensitivity to the individual needs and situations of staff. We keep the bigger picture in mind as we administer the details. So in sum, we work for you. And then real briefly, what we do, we generally separate the HR work functions by these categories here. Much of what we do crosses over areas, however, and we approach our solutions from a cross-functional perspective in many respects. There's not a particular order of importance on this slide or significance, but it is the order that will present more detail about what we do. So briefly, the first bullet, employee engagement, that includes things like employee surveys, our employee engagement SharePoint site, various forms of staff communications that we do. Our labor and employee relations function includes things like counseling and discipline, probation and performance evaluations, labor management, and then policy guidance and interpreting contracts and guidance from the Governor's Office of Employee Relations. Personnel administration includes recruitment and hiring activities, as well as in conjunction with labor relations, probation and performance evaluation, holds and leaves of absences, attendance and leave, benefits, classification, and examination planning. Training and staff development includes administration of the statewide learning management systems, system, the SLMS, as well as provision of and coordination of live stand-up trainings. They may be things like union-sponsored trainings. We recently did a career mobility office training through civil service, those types of things. So some of these activities have more overlap than others. Again, for example, probation and performance evaluation or attendance and leave. Those are things that often straddle personnel and labor relations. The activities with regard to onboarding and ongoing technical assistance are things that is really a team effort between personnel.
Can you project a little?
Sure. It's really a team effort between personnel, labor relations, training, and employee engagement. And the last bullet there is general guidance and technical assistance. To list everything that we do in human resources would probably take a notebook instead of a slideshow. We really serve as a resource for all areas of the agency to provide HR perspective and interpretation wherever it's needed. In that respect, we really are true generalists in our jobs. So probably one of the most important things then, who we are. So your team is here up front, minus Sandra Washington, who is manning the office right now because today is payday, so it's an important day for us to have somebody up in the office just in case. And Margaret Reineman, who is on vacation. And I apologize to Donna, I didn't put your name up here. And it was not intentional. So if you want to come on up and sit at the front, you can. But this is a breakdown of generally speaking what our assignments are in the office. We do currently have a vacancy in our training unit, and we are recruiting. So hopefully that's going to be a coming soon for everybody. So again, while we do assign specific tasks and areas to specific staff, we predominantly we're HR generalists, and we each provide a wide range of services and support. And this is partly because of the size and the organization of our HR office, as well as the size of the rest of the agency. And it also is reflective of our efforts to cross-train our staff and to have shared technical expertise. And then another important thing to highlight just in our introduction is that we do a lot of what we do through partnerships with other offices and other individuals. We work very closely with programs, with staff, with other bureaus within administration here in the Department of State, as well as outside agencies to accomplish our goals and objectives. Some of our key partners are internally department managers, executives, and staff, BAS, fiscal, administrative rules, counsel's office, and then externally the Department of Civil Service, the Governor's Office of Employee Relations, the OGS Business Services Center, the Division of the Budget, as well as labor unions. While HR obviously has a critical role in staffing the agency programs, there's actually very little that we do that doesn't include some level of either collaboration with or approval from some of these outside agencies, such as Civil Service and GOER in D.C. We do work hard to establish and maintain strong relationships with these agencies and to build and maintain credibility and respect, which really helps us in our future collaboration and requests and approvals with them. So at this point, that's the introduction, and we're going to get into more detail about the various activities and functions that we have. So we're going to start with employee engagement, and I'm going to hand it off to Joan, who's going to take over from that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Raise your hand if you looked at Check It Out this morning. Oh, I'm not preaching to the choir. I thought I'd be preaching to the choir today, but please, when you go back to your desk, check it out. So the engagement initiative is really to do the best we can to connect employees to their agency, to the work that they do, and to each other. And if we can do that, it's a win-win situation, right? It's great for employees because they feel valued, they feel empowered, and it's great for the agency because they have a workforce that is motivated and committed. So DOS developed an employee engagement initiative that really supports their mission and vision statement. Specifically, our DOS mission says that we will provide a superior environment for staff by focusing on professional development and providing enriching work experience and creating opportunities for staff to help shape the public agenda. And it also links into the executive operational management principles, saying that the #1 bullet, actually, for our executive staff is workforce development and employee satisfaction, ensuring professional development opportunities exist for our employees, and continually seeking paths to improve employee morale. So DOS is really committed to this agency, not just in theory, but in writing, and they have taken action by supporting this engagement initiative. So this is the mission of what engagement hopes to do, our mission, what we want to do now, our vision, what we hope to do in the future, because this needs to be a program that's sustainable, right? Not something that just is an initiative that happened in 2018 and 2019. So prior to the start date of May 2018, there was a committee, the Retention and Employee Morale Committee, that did a lot of great work, a lot of hard work, a lot of great work, developed a report for executives, and some of the things that have been initiated today are based on the work that was done before the formal initiative even began. We put together a small engagement team that was really a work group, and once the survey was nearing development, we took the former group and we created this advisory council. So we now have an advisory council made up of DOS employees that take a look at any recommendations that we have before we even send them to executive for approval. As you know, the survey went out in January of 2019, assessing the culture here at DOS for 2018. We had a 63% response rate, which I think was terrific. Just a reminder that it was a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being not so great, 5 being awesome, and we were at 3.72. That's closer to agreeing with all of those positive statements than it is to being neutral. So the results were really awesome, and I think something to celebrate, but as in life, there's always room for improvement. And leadership really took not only the survey results, but the comments that were made on the survey very, very seriously, and have supported a number of employee engagement initiatives. The first thing that they did was make sure that the employee engagement SharePoint site, thank you, Ken, thank you, Judy, was available for our staff. I mean, most SharePoint sites aren't up and running yet, but we needed a way that we could communicate the survey results and continue to connect and communicate with our staff. So we needed to get the survey results up, which we did, all of the aggregate information and some of the themes from the survey. This About DOS program is as a result of the survey, trying to connect us and understand what we're doing. Raise your hand if this is not the first About DOS you've been to. Okay. If it's your first time, welcome. What took you so long? But anyway, I also can't talk about DOS without recognizing John Furtado and Jenny Munoz, who take our terrific project and WebEx it out to our sites and our staff that in-house that can't make it and are visiting with us through their computers. So thank you, John and Jenny, for making About DOS possible. We have had this HR presentation is the 8th presentation in the series. We have another one from ONA that is coming up in early July. They'll be talking about their experience with immigrants at the northern border of our country. We hear an awful lot about immigration in the southern. We're going to learn about their experiences with folks from the northern. So So, do you know, for those of you who saw it this morning, you know we have some wonderful information about our colleague Milan today. It's really, really simple. You just share a little bit about your role at DOS, some things that you might care to share, and a photo. It's painless. We have some people in the room who have already done it. Mark, how was it for you?
It was good.
It was good for you, right? So I have included, the form is on the website, but I've included a hard copy today. I encourage you, just take a minute, fill it out, and we'll get a picture, and we'll get you to be part of our Do You Know community. We have a Meet Our Team. Meet Our Team initiative. Project teams or units that are doing great work, let us know about that. We'd like to hear how DOS is functioning as a team. We have a section called Who's New, where our new employees are highlighted at the end of the month. Division News, have you got a new project or a press release or take your folks on a field trip? Let us know about it so that we can let the rest of the agency know about it. Check it out, I mentioned. It's that great weekly email that clutters up your mailbox on Wednesday mornings. Some really interesting information, I think. We're still haven't reached the 350 mark for folks who have looked at it. We have, 470 to 90 employees. So that means we still have over 150 people who have never even been to the employee engagement website. So if you can talk it up a little bit, we're really looking forward to that 350 mark. We have different staff events. Our most recent one was Pride. We had over 50 folks out front on the front steps, and we had 18 folks in New York City. 9 of our staff who were at a conference got together and took their own Pride picture, and the whole division of licensing, I just saw Amy here somewhere, they all got together and did their own. It's terrific, and all of those are on the employee engagement website. We also have, and there are other events as well, domestic violence, the workforce challenge, Bikes to Work, all of those things you can learn about on the employee engagement website. And if there's any initiative that you would like to see supported, I'm hoping that we'll do breast cancer in October. If there's any other thing that's near and dear to your heart that you would like us to consider getting behind, rallying behind as a DOS family, please let us know. You can email me or the engagement website, and we'll get on it. Also on the engagement website is our DOS mission and vision. And if you haven't taken a look at that, I think that's really important, and our executive leadership priorities also. I also want to bring to your attention, you may not know if you are not a division leader, that division leadership is now meeting monthly. So it's an opportunity for them to talk with each other, to team build. Misha Williams and I have the opportunity to talk with them. We talked about work schedules, to make sure that division leadership knew about the flexibility that's built in for our work schedules here at DOS. And lots of other things that we're sharing with them, they're sharing with us, hopefully to make DOS a better place to live. You also may not know, if you're not a manager or supervisor, that engagement sends out a very brief managerial Monday memo to managers. The topics include things like delegation or traits of good managers, bullying, steps to get rid of gossip, judge your employees fairly. So just little tidbits that division leadership can filter down to their managers and supervisors, just reminders, some good tips about how to create a great work culture. We will be sending the survey out again in 2020 in January, and in terms of the results from this survey, there's more to come. We're still working on lots of things. Please keep an eye out, and thank you for your time. And I'd like to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Ken.
Morning, everybody. So we're going to talk about labor relations. What does everybody think of when they hear labor relations?
Ooh, bad guy.
Yeah, does anybody have a bad connotation with labor relations?
Did you hear me say boo, bad guy?
I only heard you. A lot of people have a negative perception of labor relations, and our job in labor relations is to advise and assist management and employees. We represent the agency in a number of matters, but we also are here for employees. We'll advise you of your rights. We'll advise you of things that you can do to protect yourself. We make sure that the rules are administered fairly and equitably. A lot of times our job puts us in an adversarial role with employees, unfortunately. But you can see some of the things we do. We assist supervisors with counseling. We administer the disciplinary process for the agency. But we're also here to interpret policies the state has, union contracts, things like that. What is our mindset when we hear the word counseling? What comes to mind? Lots of bad things, probably. Counseling isn't supposed to be a punishment. It's not punitive. Counseling is a constructive conversation between a supervisor and a subordinate. Anytime you've had a supervisor come to you and say, hey, you did this, you should have did this instead, that is counseling in its purest form. It doesn't have to be an adversarial thing. It's identifying what went wrong and what should happen in the future. A lot of times those conversations are just part of our natural work. But everybody has this connotation of counseling being such a negative thing. It really is just setting expectations, letting you know what you're supposed to be doing. Other things we do in labor relations, we request employee health service evaluations. Anybody familiar with employee health service evaluations? Yeah, something that we don't get into a lot, fitness for duty exams, Section 72 of the Civil Service Law. We can also have evaluations done if somebody's out for an extended period of time before returning to work. Basically, it's going to see the state doctor. A lot of times if you're out long period of time, we'll have you see the state doctor before you come back. Specifically, if you're in a position where you have to, lift things and pull things and those laborer type jobs, make sure you're actually fit to return to work. We facilitate labor management meetings. We try to maintain a positive relationship with the unions. We get together, we talk about a variety of things, health and safety concerns, concerns with, staffing levels and things like that. We try to maintain an open door policy, not just with our employees, but with the unions, and try to keep good relationships with our union leadership. And we assist with performance evaluations, probation reports. We're going to talk quite a bit about those things. Another thing that's not on the slide is we hear employee grievances. Is anybody familiar with the grievance process? I think to a lot of people it's unfamiliar territory. Grievances are usually filed with your local managers, your division leader, something like that. And if you get an unfavorable decision at your first step, then you would have rights to appeal to us. And even if you don't get the resolution you're looking for through us, you have rights to go to the Governor's Office of Employee Relations that I believe Chuck mentioned before. But there's a process in place to protect your rights as an employee, and we're part of that process. So performance evaluations. The first bullet there, they differ slightly for the different bargaining units, DSEA, PEF, MC. There's a lot of nuances to them. Feel free to call us if you have any questions about performance evaluations. There's a lot of little things that are different based on each union, such as 6-month recertification. The 6-month evaluation is required for a PEF employee, optional for a CSEA employee, but highly encouraged. All employees should be evaluated annually. Is that news to anybody? Who's got an evaluation in the past year? All right, most of you. We should be evaluated every year. Why should we be evaluated every year? All right, a lot of people think of performance evaluations as something we do for employees that are having problems. We look at it a lot like counseling, but there's benefits to doing performance evaluations for good employees as well. Especially a lot of our managers are very busy. but how many times do you sit down with an employee and talk about the work that they're doing, talk about the good work that they're doing, give them something in writing, put it in their personal history folder saying you're doing a great job. You know, once a year we can take the opportunity to do that. And as an employee, it's good to get that feedback. Hopefully it happens more than once a year. But once a year we can get that formal feedback saying that we're doing a good job and that really our work is appreciated and our efforts are noticed. Every employee should get the evaluation they deserve. Nothing in an evaluation should be a surprise if you're having issues with an employee or if an employee is good. Those are things you should be talking about with them throughout the year. So it's very important to give feedback outside of the evaluation process and then give the employee an honest evaluation. You know, due dates for the performance evaluations are generally the employee's anniversary date when they attain that grade. There are some variations. MC employees are all April 1st, regardless of when you were hired. There's impacts of transfers and things like that. Absences from the payroll could extend evaluation periods to go off the payroll. I've seen evaluations for employees that are, 18-month periods rather than a year, because the employee was off the payroll for 6 months of the year, of the period. There is a monetary impact tied to the evaluations. If you get an unsatisfactory evaluation, you would lose a step increase or lose access to longevity payments. But not getting an evaluation is just as good as getting a good one. So you'll be entitled to your step, you'll be entitled to your longevity payment. For most of us, the only options on an evaluation are satisfactory or unsatisfactory. If you have the pleasure of being an MC employee, I believe there's 5 rating categories. But for the most part, it's SAT or unsat. Here's a question for everybody. If you get a satisfactory evaluation, but you're not happy with the write-up, you have the right to appeal that. Who thinks you can? So the only appeal rights you have in the performance evaluation process is when you get an unsatisfactory evaluation. If you get a satisfactory evaluation, you don't have any appeal rights. But what do you have the right to do? Yeah, you have the right to make comments on the evaluation. You have a right to submit a written rebuttal explaining why. You actually have a right to submit a written rebuttal to anything in your personal history folder that you deem adverse. The language is a little different for CSEA and PEF. It's one of the places PEF has slightly better contract. But you have rights, and those are things that we could explain to you. If you get a performance evaluation, you're not satisfied with it, you're not happy with it, you do have rights. I encourage everybody to go talk to their unions, but you can always talk to us. So probation is similar to performance evaluations, but probation, I think most of us are aware. Typically for new employees joined the agency, just got appointed into state service, maybe who recently transferred. Probation periods vary depending on appointment. All right, if you're a supervisor and you get a new employee, HR will communicate with you what the probationary period is. There's scheduled intervals for evaluation due dates. Those will be communicated to you. Everybody probably knows we send out the evaluations. If you don't get them done, we'll harass you until they do get done, right? Anybody been on the receiving end of that? A couple of you. Probation periods could be extended, typically based on absences. Who knows the rule? Yeah, I heard 20 days. Typically, we allow 20 days of absence during a probationary period. It's civil service law. Anything beyond that, we extend. The point of the extension isn't a punishment. It's to give you the full evaluation period to be able to rate the employee. You think about, sometimes there's a 6-month maximum probationary period, depending on the appointment. So if an employee is out for a month out of 6 months, you've only got 5 to rate them. So we extend for the month, so you got the full 6 months to evaluate the employee. Make sense? All right, once passed, employees have rights to their job. This is different in the private world. As civil service permanent competitive employees, we have legal rights to our job. Has anybody ever heard the myth of you can't get rid of a state employee? That's where it comes from. We have a right to our job. That is a myth, but you know, once you're off probation, you have that right to your job, and there's a process to get rid of somebody if they're not performing, if they're not doing the right thing, if they're committing misconduct. But all that is, you know, the agency has to prove that you're doing something incorrect. So you have a right to your job. We can't just fire you for no reason. All right, and then traineeships. Anybody familiar with traineeships? Function very similar to probationary periods. Again, scheduled intervals throughout the traineeship period. A lot of traineeships are 2 years. Sometimes there's 1 year traineeships. There should be goals and milestones. So very similar. The real difference between traineeships and probation is that generally with traineeships, there's not going to be an expectation of you performing the full job duties on day one. There's more of a growing in period with the realization that you're transitioning to, you know, a different type of work that maybe you haven't done before. All right, any questions? Last thing we have is attendance and leave. In HR, we also administer attendance and leave. We partner with the Business Services Center. There are, you know, benefits and attendance and leave folks. But we administer a few programs at the agency level, such as our alternate work schedule program. You know, they also call that the compressed work week or the 9 out of 10 program. Anybody participate in that? Okay. It's kind of nice having that extra day off. So what you do is you take 1 day of your 10-day work week and you take those hours and compress them into the other 9 days. So you still end up working 75 hours in a pay period, but you end up getting a day off. Unlike VRWS, the voluntary reduction in work schedule, anybody participate in that? No. So VRWS is you trade in money for time. You could go 5%, 10%, all the way up to 30%, 5% increments. And instead of getting money in your paycheck, you get that as time on your time card that you could either schedule off to use on a regular basis. You could bank and, you know, use it. A lot of people will use that if they plan on having some type of procedure and they don't have enough accruals. It's a way to build accruals up. You could save them. There's rules about that program. I won't bore you with all the details, but it's something that, you know, HR could explain to you if you're interested in. Leaves of absence. There's mandatory leaves of absence, such as serving probation with another agency. There's also discretionary leaves that we would review and approve. So there's instances that you could, you know, take a leave and have the right to come back to your job if you choose to. We advise managers, supervisors, and employees on the appropriate use of accruals. If you have any questions, especially about those confusing drop-down categories, you know, the social release time, and everybody saw the flyers we had in the elevators recently about the time off to vote. That was yesterday, missed your opportunity. But we could have explained those things to you. You said right on the flyer, you know, call us if you have any questions. And then I mentioned that we're the liaison with the BSC. So there's a lot of overlap between what we do and what the BSC does, but we try to help you navigate that overlap. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chuck.
Thanks, sir.
Go.
So the next major function that we do here in HR is personnel administration. I'm going to be doing that, this part of the presentation. Really, this is a function that is primarily done by Jonathan and his team. Heidi, Kelly, Sarah, Christine, wave hi. So to restate from our introduction, personnel administration is really a lot of different functions. It includes recruitment and hiring, which that also includes onboarding and orientation activities. It includes probation and performance evaluation, working in conjunction with labor relations. Again, working in conjunction with labor relations, it includes holds and leaves of absences, both mandatory and discretionary, attendance and leave, benefits. It includes reasonable accommodation, classification, which Jonathan will talk a little bit more about classification, but that involves, for example, changes in titles, changes in grade allocations, new positions or changing existing positions. And it also includes examination planning, and that includes working with the Department of Civil Service to schedule exams, to develop minimum qualifications for exams, the information that is on the announcements when they come out. Sometimes if there's technical test content, to identify subject matter experts and work with Civil Service to develop questions or what are called rubrics. And as Ken mentioned also, much of what we do in these areas, we do in conjunction and collaboration with the BSC, and they're an office within the Office of General Services, which supports centralized HR functions. And just really briefly, the BSC, their functions include aspects of benefits, onboarding, health insurance, family medical leave and other types of medical leaves, paid family leave, which currently is only available to MC employees, but based upon union negotiations of new contracts, may be extended to other bargaining units as well. The BSC also is our payroll administrator, so they work with direct deposit, tax withholdings, payroll deductions, inquiries about things like lump sum payments, overtime payments, holiday payments. They do certain employment verifications for employees. They maintain I-9 forms, which are the federal employment verification forms. They are also where you initiate personal information changes if you have a marriage or a name change or an address change. They also assist us with processing personnel transactions, and they administer the LATS time card system as well. So they're a key partner that we have, for sure. So another way of looking at personnel administration, I like to look at it kind of as a life cycle of employment, from recruitment to eventual separation, that may be. So if we walk through this kind of life cycle, things really start with the intent to fill process, or ITF, and approval of hiring freeze waivers from the Division of the Budget. Those are really those pre-hiring activities that we do when we're planning to fill a position. And then our folks in personnel administration work on recruitment and hiring, onboarding. Onboarding actually also includes the ID cards that we are issued and get programmed for our building access control systems. The probationary process is really part of that life cycle. It includes what Ken mentioned, the tracking of probations and the notices to supervisors when probation reports are due, guidance and technical assistance, and then eventually when somebody separates, we get into the offboarding process. And the last piece is what we collectively call workforce planning. And workforce planning, I do have a slide at the end where I'll get into a bit more detail, but that's basically a continuous process. It's both formal and informal, and it's a process to identify HR needs and to plan for and implement initiatives that best position the agency to be successful in staffing the programs. It includes various aspects of staffing, exam planning, classification, training, and as I said, there's one more slide about workforce planning that we'll highlight at the end. That'll give you a bit more detail. So at this point, I'm going to ask Jonathan to come up and talk about one of the specific aspects of personnel administration, which is classification.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan. I'm the assistant director, and I work very closely with the team here in terms of the personnel administration. Oh, sorry, can you hear me okay? Sorry, I heard somebody on the phone. But I work very closely with the personnel administration team, and one of the things that, as I said, Chuck would like me to speak about specifically is classification, because classification is for us, it's one of the more interesting exercises we do when we're performing personnel administration activities. Essentially, classification, the next slide here, is the establishment and maintenance of positions in state service. Whenever we seek to classify positions, we're looking to either, when we classify positions, we're seeking to either classify them, which is the establishment of a brand new position in state service, or reclassification, which is where you take one position or one title and you want to change it to a different title. Like say if you want to reclassify something from a coastal resources specialist grade 18 to a local government specialist grade 18. So you're taking one position, you're changing the duties and responsibilities of it to a totally different title, and that's what reclassification is. And reallocation is a totally different something as well. Reallocation is like, say for example, you want to take a position and say it's a single position class, like maybe widget maker 4, like M4, and you want to change it to become a widget maker 4 M5 because you think that the duties and responsibilities are that much more, that it's more supported at the M5 level. So that's what reallocation is. And I also want to show you guys a nice little quote. I put this quote up on here because classification is near and dear to my heart. When I was in grad school, I interned at the Division of Classification and Compensation at the Department of Civil Service. I worked for Abner. He was my section head, and now he's the director, the M7 over there. And so he had this famous quote where he said, there are positions and there are people. So classification is the establishment of the position itself, and when you establish a position, you're looking at the duties and responsibilities of the position, and it's separate from the appointment mechanisms of trying to figure out who you want to get somebody into. So that's the reason why he explained that there are positions and there are people, because when you're doing classification, you're looking solely at the position, you're looking solely at the duties and responsibilities of it, and it's supposed to be independent of the appointment mechanism of trying to get somebody into said position. And I'm going to briefly talk about HR's role in the process. Basically, as you may be aware, division directors and deputy secretaries submit ITF requests on a periodic basis to us, and in these requests, sometimes we decide that there are instances where a classification action or classification work must be performed. So in those instances, we meet with the division directors and deputy secretaries to go over and make sure that the duties and responsibilities and there's an accurate organizational chart to make sure everything's appropriate, and then we submit that stuff to the Department of Civil Service once it's been approved by executive, and if Civil Service approves, and sometimes DOB must approve too if there are fiscal implications involved. Well, once Civil Service approves, that gives us the go-ahead to then begin the process of recruiting for the position. And so I put this mug on here. Sorry, I thought it was kind of funny, but because everybody kind of thinks classification is a mystery, but it's not. I was joking with the staff. It's kind of like I like to joke around with people. It kind of reminds me of Sesame Street. When we were all kids, one of these things is not like the other one. So it's comparative analysis, and it's in its purest form. You're looking at the duties and responsibilities of a position, and you're trying to compare it and make sure that it's consistent with all the other positions in that title, whether it's in this agency or within other agencies, because that's the way the merit system is run. You want, if something's a grade 18, you want to have similar duties and responsibilities as all other grade 18s in state service, even in that title too. And when you're looking at these things, you want to keep one thing in mind, and this is one thing that Civil Service, specifically Class and Comp, is very big on. When you're doing this, you want to keep in mind equal pay for equal work, which is Section 115 of the Civil Service Law. Hence the reason why you want substantially similar duties for a specific position in a title throughout state service. So when you're looking at classification, you want to make sure that an OA1 at Department of State is substantially similar to an OA1 at Department of Health, at OMH, OPW, everything like that, because they're all grade 6, so we want to adhere to equal pay for equal work. And then I'll talk about training as well, because as Chuck said, we're seeking to fill a training person. So because I started my state career, my first permanent job after I got my internship done at Class and Comp, I worked in the training office at OMH. So I'll try to go through this very quickly for us. One of the big things about training is that training has to deal with the statewide learning management system, which I'd say on the slide here you can see where to access it. It does keep a training history of for each employee, and the training history is consistent whether you move agencies. This is my 5th agency, and you can go all the way back to all the trainings I've taken, even as far back as OMH. So you can see when I took trainings at OMH, State Ed, you know, DFS, and here, the only thing that isn't on there is civil service because I was an intern then. But it also, under your training history, it maintains certificates of completion. So, you know, if your supervisor ever says, hey, did you take such and such training? You know, you can go to your training history and say, not only did I do it, but, you know, you can print up your certificate of completion and show your supervisor, yes, you know, I took it, you know, then, and all that kind of stuff. And if you have any issues or problems, because as I said, we're seeking to fill a training position, if you have any issues with SLMS, we advise that you, you know, contact the SLMS help desk. Like if you're having difficulty being able to take, you know, the mandatory trainings and that kind of stuff, we're enrolling in a class. Training also deals with, you know, this is the one thing, you know, everybody usually groans. You know, I sometimes groan too. But, you know, we have the annual mandated training from GORE, and GORE states that it is required for all full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees in executive branch agencies, and it is accessible for most DLS employees through SLMS. And, you know, most of these trainings are online. Some of these trainings you guys are probably familiar with, you know, the sexual harassment prevention, workplace violence, which we're hoping to finalize this year because you have to, for workplace violence, you have to take an annual report and, you know, basically state, you know, the incidents that happened and show employees, you know, how they can be safer at work. We also have other online training opportunities through SLMS. One thing that we have is Empire Knowledge Bank. DOS purchased 25 licenses through Empire Knowledge Bank. We have about 19 of them left, and they're additional coursework that you can take to further develop your professional skills. We ask, because I say, you know, it's available for PEP and MC employees, because we purchased only the 25 licenses. CSA employees actually are able to get free licenses through the CSA partnership. So we ask if you're a CSA employee, try to go through the partnership to get your Empire Knowledge Bank license, because that makes our the licenses we purchased go, you know, stretch a little bit that much further. And we also have external partnerships in the training unit. We frequently interact with the CSA partnership and public service workshop program. You guys are all probably aware that we did a big hiring boom in the call center here. So we're putting in a request actually to go to the CSA partnership for customer service training for all the brand new people we hired for the call center, because they're all going to be CSA represented. And the public service workshop program, you know, that's for PEP employees and certain MC employees if there's seating availability, and they have coursework like professional writing, how to give dynamic presentations, all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, those kind of like administrative kind of trainings that are given through the public service workshop program. And there's GORE-sponsored trainings. You guys have probably all seen the advertisements for like the essentials of supervision training and, you know, other such trainings like that are GORE-sponsored and are given to employees to try to help develop their professional skills and teach them how to become better managers and supervisors. And there's one other thing that we wanted to talk about too, which is tuition reimbursement. You know, if you're PEP, CSA, MC, and I think other bargaining units too have it, right, Ken? Yeah, like I think there might even be one for NYSCOPA, but I haven't dealt with NYSCOPA in a while. But tuition reimbursement, you know, you can go to your unions and basically, you know, show them evidence that you've been taking, you know, coursework and classes. You can get, you know, reimbursed for some of the, this is keyword, some of the costs of the tuition. They won't pay for everything, but they'll help you out. And I'll turn it back over to Chuck.
Thank you. You're welcome. So I realize that we've collectively gone a little bit long, so I'm going to try to speed up these last few slides so that we try to give some time for questions. That summarizes or completes our summary of the various functions that we do. So we're going to focus a couple of slides just on what I like to call the myth of the magic wand. And oftentimes, and through our careers, we hear this a lot. We hear people say that, you know, HR can do anything they really want to do if they want to do it, or that HR has unlimited flexibility in what they do. And the reality really is that everything we do is actually firmly rooted in civil service law, rule, or policy. And sometimes it's that confusing complexity of that civil service merit system that leads people not to realize that we actually do have very set parameters for what we do. So when we give advice to folks and guidance and technical assistance. We do our best to try to impart some of that knowledge and explain why things are the way that they are so that people have a little bit better knowledge of the merit system. And in conjunction with that, as we mentioned earlier, we try to coordinate career mobility training that civil service offers so that people get a better understanding of the merit system. We had a class that was well attended last week. We have another class in July. So
July 16th.
July 16th, so we look forward to folks signing up for that. So that's slide one of the myth of the magic wand. So the second slide is really to try to give you some examples. We wanted to not necessarily do a merit system training by any means, but we wanted to kind of demonstrate for you some of the complexity of some of the everyday things that we go through so that you understand there's a lot of variables involved in determining. So the first example is appointment mechanism. So when we try to say, is somebody appointable to a specific site that we're hiring for, there are quite a few different variables that come into play. So for example, whether that appointment is going to be temporary or permanent makes a big difference. Whether the position we're appointing them to is temporary or permanent. Whether there's an eligible list that exists for the position, and if there is one, is it open competitive list or is it a promotional list? And if it's a promotional list, is it a department-only promotional list or does it have an interdepartmental component to it? There is something on a promotional list called an order of certification that might change whether or not there's only one candidate field or what's called an A field, B field. The size of the appointable candidate field makes a difference. And actually what the candidate's appointment history, their current status, their exam history sometimes even, can all play a factor into whether or not they can be appointable to a certain position. A lot of that individualized analysis comes in determining whether or not they're appointable by transfer to something. The other example we wanted to talk about was leaves of absence when you serve probation. So as Ken mentioned, most times when a current state employee takes another permanent appointment in either the competitive or non-competitive class, they serve a probationary period, and they're usually entitled to a leave of absence or a mandatory hold from their former job while they're serving probation. But whether or not that leave of absence or that hold is truly mandatory or discretionary can depend a lot on factors as well. And those factors, again, they include, are they coming from or going to a permanent or a temporary appointment? What is the jurisdictional class of the title they're coming from and going to? In other words, is it competitive? Is it non-competitive? Is it exempt? What is the bargaining unit of the position that they're coming from and going to? Is it PEP? Is it CSEA? Is it MC? Are they staying in DOS, taking a position in DS, or are they taking a position at another state agency? Are they going to a higher graded position when they take this job and serve probation? Or are they going laterally or even downward? Are they currently on probation in their active position that they're being appointed from? All those things come into play when we try to figure out whether or not somebody gets a hold on a mandatory basis or not. In actuality, there's a civil service policy document that has a 3-page grid that lays out what they think are all the possible scenarios that can come into place. And we use that grid to figure out, is it going to be a mandatory or a discretionary leave? So again, this isn't really meant to be a merit system training in itself. It's just to show you that there's a lot of method to what is sometimes perceived as the madness behind what we do. And then as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the concept of workforce planning is kind of this collaborative approach to making sure that we get the best possible staff program areas. And that includes aspects of exam planning where we look at what tests are needed, we look at how robust the eligible lists are, we look at whether or not programs might need changes to minimum qualifications or the technical content of lists, exams. It looks to see if we should advocate for additional transferability between titles It includes looking at whether we should try to restructure titles, the classification process. It also looks at other tools like to recruit and retain quality employees, like, for example, outreach and promotion of certain job postings or certain examinations, whether or not we should pursue any special salary treatments for positions that are deemed hard. And lastly, it uses data analytics as much as we can to assess current workforce, identify trends, and target initiatives for improvement. So that's kind of the deep stuff. Here's the fun stuff. I don't know how fun these facts are. But we have a lot of different programs, a lot of locations, a lot of different types of jobs, and it makes for a high volume of activity. So really quickly, we have over 600 employees when you count our full-time and our per diem special payroll folks. We have a pretty even split between professionals and administrative support, and that's per a federal occupational category. That's what the FOC is. We have a pretty even split between PEP and CSEA employees and a little bit less MC employees. We actually use, for those 600-plus employees, over 125 titles are used, and many of those are specific just to DOS. Our most popular titles right now are Office Assistant 1, Assistant Services Clerk, and Business Document Specialist 2. We just did a huge recruitment initiative to staff a call center for corporations and licensing, so some of those ratios may change, but those last two titles are in there as well. In calendar year 2018, we filled 114 jobs, and we're well ahead of that pace for 2019. We've already filled 61 positions, and there's 40 more that are actively under recruitment. This is just helpful web links. These are hot links, and Joan's going to post this to the engagement site, so you'll have access to that. Our handouts we'll put at the door when you guys head out. That includes our full mission statement that's framed on our wall. There's an org chart for human resources for reference purposes. There's some good reference information about personnel administration, performance evaluations, probations, and workforce planning. And there's a couple sheets with a lot of good phone numbers, likes, and emails for us. So thank you so much.
We'll ask that when you leave, if you would put your evaluation table, please make sure you sign in. We are tracking not who comes, but the number of people that participate. Thank you for coming today. Thank the HR staff for all of the incredible work that they did. And I'm sure you're probably all going to fill out your do you know sheet today, so it might be a while before you're up, but please consider filling those out and submitting those too. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for ONA.